page back to the discussion from the Burgeoning Trusts, picking up in the oil basket with a little bit of history. The result was, again, not a monopoly, but an oligopoly, control of a commodity or a service by a small number of large, powerful companies. 6, great financial groups dominated the railroad industry. We've gone over some of that. And again, if you don't have a copy in your library, search for it. Gustavus Myers, the populist muckraker, wrote powerfully. When he wrote that book, it was highly suppressed, had a hard time getting it published, but one of our listeners sent it to me. Finally, it was published in the Modern Library series. They do cover a lot of that kind of material. Again, 6 great financial groups dominated the railroad industry. You could say the banking industry as well. You could say the coal industry as well. And ultimately the oil industry. But they also controlled Congress, the White House, and the judiciary. Not by accident, but by intention. Let's continue now. A handful of holding companies controlled utilities and steel. Rockefeller's Standard Oil owned about 85% of the oil business. You want to know why? Nobels and the rest conspired against the Tsar in Russia? Because the oil was starting to flow over there, and they could see that a land of serfs was about to become an industrial powerhouse, a giant sitting on top of untapped mineral resources of enormous magnitude. Rockefeller's Standard Oil owned about 85% of the oil business. Large companies like Standard Oil and American Tobacco weathered the depressions of the 1890s. Long story on American Tobacco in Gustavus Myers' book. And after 1898, financiers and industrialists, the captains of finance and industry, to use Auguste Comte's terminology and Henry St. Simon, financiers and industrials who came up with the term industrial. That's Claude Henry de Roy Saint-Simon. Some would say the father of French socialism, by the way. Industrialists followed their example and formed the Amalgamated Copper Company, Consolidated Tobacco, U.S. Rubber, and a host of others. By 1909, just 1% of the industrial firms were producing nearly half the manufactured goods. 1% of the industrial firms manufacturing nearly half the manufactured goods. Giant businesses reached abroad for raw materials in new markets, like Russia. United Fruit, an empire of plantations and steamships in the Caribbean, exploited opportunities created by victory in the war with Spain. Lots of white slavery going on there, I can assure you. U.S. Steel worked with overseas companies to fix the price of steel rails, an unattainable dream just a few years before. Price fixers, monopolists. For decades, competition had sent rail prices up and down. Now they stayed at $28 a ton. And through the famous Gary dinners, in which Albert H. Gary of U.S. Steel brought steel executives together, market conditions were fixed over wide areas of the industry. Oh, we could continue with that. And we probably shall on another broadcast. But let's go back to where we left off yesterday in the Encyclopedia of the Social Sciences. This, written by one of the many different Der Führer's professors, Paul T. Hohmann, the Encyclopedia of the Social Sciences, largely a master class for the Hochschule für Politik in Germany, but written in English, thankfully. The failures of such agreements, again, in review, just picking up in the middle of this lengthy encyclopedia article, the first in a series of articles in this section under trusts. The failure of such agreements, again, to attain contractual status effectively undermined the possibility of permanency, since each party thereto was at all times legally a free agent. Calling up the words of John Salmond there. The incentives to act as such were, for some members of almost every association, at times too strong to be resisted. Various devices were devised to overcome this centrifugal tendency, in other words, from the center to the edge. Understand that the new paradigm is centripetal, from the edge to the center, taking power to the edge. It's a little bit different. Including, this is like the idea, well, we don't need to go there, Will. Including leasing of plants, joint ownership of marketing corporations, and the achievement of communities of interests through interlocking stock ownership and interlocking directorates. You don't understand how that works? Renee Wormser, the power and the influence of the foundations. Foundations are power and their influence, the title of the book, Renee Wormser. The idea here of interlocking stock ownership, interlocking directorates. This is all late 1800s, early 1900s. The problem of the unity of action was not, however, solved by such devices. Furthermore, the invasion of interlopers could not be legally blocked. Gould and Fisk, out of nowhere, blindsiding the big guys. They figured it out. Day traders, clever fellows, became billionaires. Furthermore, the invasion of the interlopers could not legally be blocked. A legally unacceptable form of permanent association was therefore sought, one affording as well greater powers of resistance to outside attack. This was found in the equity device of trusteeship. The equity device, the 3 E's of sustainable development. Environment, you could say environmentalism or the green religion. E, the economy. Stupid. It's the economy, stupid. And 3, equity. This was found in the equity device of trusteeship, the trustees. The trustees and the beneficiaries, and now the blue helmets are moving in to become trustees in Libya. Once again, the United States stepped into Iraq and became the trustees. The United States and others stepped into Afghanistan and were now becoming the trustees of all of their wealth, all of their natural resources, their precious metals, etc. The first great monopolistic trust was the Standard Oil Trust. Okay, got that one down? Has a little bit more to do than what the Reader's Digest was telling us in their legal guide, their legal encyclopedia. It has a little bit more to do than protecting yourself from tax benefits and passing on your money to your children. Baby, we're talking about interlocking stock ownership, interlocking directorates. We're talking about intergenerational pass-through of wealth. The first great monopolistic trust was the Standard Oil Trust, the form of organization which in 1882 provided the whole movement with the name of trust. Now you know where it comes from, officially. Under the trust agreement, stockholders in the various refining, pipeline, and other associated companies assigned their stock to a board of trustees at an agreed valuation, receiving trust certificates in exchange. The trustees attained legal title and voting rights over the stock, while the stockholders, in a total income realized from the properties jointly held and administered by the trustees, while the stockholders secured a fractionalized pro rata beneficial interest, they're the beneficiaries, in the total income realized from the properties jointly held and administered by the trustees. You've got the trustee and the trustor. You got the beneficiaries. The various corporations and firms retained their respective identities. Nominally, the trustees merely received dividends or profits and dispersed incomes to certificate holders. Nominally, merely received dividends or profits. And how many billions of dollars has the Berkshire Hathaway pulled out of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad? I wouldn't say that's nominal. But nominally, the trustees merely received dividends or profits and dispersed income to certificate holders. Actually, they were in a position to, and did, establish a unified control over the policies and activities of all the underlying companies. And remember, these railroad companies, when they got started, the first thing they would do once they got a stock majority is they would build a construction company. They would create a Halliburton, Kellogg Brown and Root, a Blackwater, etc.